stream to my profile too.
Well, we're already live, so you could do it.
Yep,
You can still
yep.
add. Hello and welcome to Media Studies. I'm James Brown. Thanks for joining me. You can check out my work at theweekendmedia.substack.com or jamesbrowntv.substack.com. I'm here with one of my banter buddies, Stabby Reyes Kulkarni.
Hello everyone. Hi, James.
He's a music writer, media analyst himself, cultural critic. He hates the word critic, but I bring it up anyway because I think it's accurate. We have a lot to get into today. I think the title is apt: Guns, Rappers, the Moon Landing, and Joe Biden. And we're going to mix in some public media as well. It's going to get pretty heavy in the middle there. So I want to start kind of light with a question that I've been pondering for a while, if you'll indulge me, Mr. Kulkarni.
Please, of course.
Okay. This is where we start with Kevin Durant. For those of you who don't know who Kevin Durant is, I wonder how. He is one of the most famous basketball players in the world. And he has provided us with this gem. Okay.
Oh boy.
Immediate reaction?
So if I didn't know that was Kevin Durant and that came across, my email or whatever, just the sound of it to review it, I would feel okay, this is an artist that's sort of in an amateur kind of lane that, needs some encouragement and some development. But I would kind of feel bad because uh, it just strikes me as it's just like not everybody can be a rapper. Like, it actually takes incredible musical skill. And this sounds it sounds like a kid, or it sounds so amateurish, right? To me, like some of the words he chooses to rhyme with each other. And it's like, okay, man, if you want to do that, like, work at it the way you would basketball, like work, get some reps, like try to hone your skill.
Dang. I think Kevin's not going to take that well.
He's the type that might actually respond to people like with followings our size, right?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. He is maybe the pettiest of all of the athletes on social media. I mean, the man needs to realize that, hey, dude, you are crazy wealthy. You don't need this. You don't need to fight with me.
I'd love it if you, my God, how amazing would that be if he tuned into the lives? Not this one, obviously, because he didn't know, but if he somehow was lurking in the live stream next time.
Yeah. And as you said, he is the type that might, that's how he rolls. But the reason why I brought him up is not even so much about the quality. It's about this repeating theme. Rappers who want to be basketball players and basketball players who want to be rappers.
Mm-hmm.
It's happened for my entire life. I remember as a kid listening to Shaq's album. I think I may have bought Shaq's album.
Yeah.
More recently, you have guys like Allen Iverson, Ron Artest, Lonzo Ball had an album. Iman Shumpert has a bunch of albums. Damian Lillard actually has a little bit of respect from rappers. I don't understand why these people who are esteemed at one level of society, I mean, they're not
very high level.
Exactly. They're not at a low level of society. They're at the very peak of their professions. The thing that they have spent their entire life building toward, they have reached.
Mm-hmm.
In the case of Kevin Durant, he's been an MVP of the league and he's won a bunch of titles.
Well, and he's talked about as if he's like inarguably one of the greatest players in history. That's the way he's talked about.
Easily top 20. And you could argue top 10.
And often bandied about as the greatest player now.
Or one of them.
However you, sure. However you
certainly. Like he's on, if there's a top 3 list, he's on it, which is an amazing feat in any profession ever, let alone the NBA.
So why are you doing this sub entry level? If like rap music is a skyscraper, he's like below the mailroom. He's not even getting in the with this song.
Dang. Man, you're gonna get him in your mentions.
Who? Him?
You're gonna get him in your mentions.
Good. I mean, you know what? I would love to seriously, if I were ever at a level where I could interview him and have an actual conversation, I would love that. I mean, but I want to let you go on with your point because I do have some response to that, but I can feel where you're going with it. But please do continue. Don't let me throw you off there.
Well, there's the other side of the coin too. All right. Master P, one of the most successful rappers ever. J. Cole, one of the most successful rappers of the last 10 years. Quavo of the Migos, one of the most successful rappers of the last 10 years. 2 Chainz, Common, Lil Romeo, just to name a few. All of these people have either attempted as adults after they become famous rappers to become basketball players. Master P, I believe, actually even played a bit in the NBA. It was kind of a joke, but yes, he did. J. Cole
played in actual games? Wait, not just practice?
I think it was one game.
Okay.
I think, if I remember correctly, was it the Charlotte Hornets?
What year are we talking here?
We're talking mid-2000s.
Okay.
So this was after he hit his height, and he was on the downside. But he was known for, celebrity all-star games and all that stuff and I think it was more of a stunt than anything.
I was going to say, wouldn't the team do that just
for the pub?
I mean, Tony Romo got to play in a Mavericks game once too,
Yeah. And, it's mostly just for the attention on the team side. And teams are publicity whores.
I would do. I mean, it's fine. I think it's kind of cool. He didn't make a legit attempt to okay, I'm going to now be an NBA player as my next career.
Yeah. Well, the closest to that in this era is J. Cole. J. Cole actually played for a team in Africa, a pro team in Africa. He played poorly for that team, but he kept on trying. And
he'd kick the shit out of us on a basketball court, though.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I don't deny that. But I wonder why put yourself through it. And just getting back to Durant for a minute. Mr. Durant has made nearly $400 million in the NBA so far.
Are you even talking? That's not even counting his endorsements and stuff.
Not counting his endorsements.
Right, so he's well on his way to a bill, isn't he? A billionaire?
Probably not getting another long-term contract. He's got a couple years on this contract. He's on the downside of his career. I don't think he's getting another giant contract. He's also built a media company. He's got crazy amounts of investments, 35 ventures. He's got an agent that seems pretty full of himself, that is his business partner, Rich Kleiman. Like the man is incredibly accomplished. And I'm pretty accomplished as a broadcaster. I've done above average. I've worked nationally. I've been on NPR. I've been on PBS. I've been on BBC.
But for to be a Kevin Durant's level would be like you being like Walter Cronkite for
Yeah,
like 10
yeah,
years or
for
something,
sure, for sure.
right? Like
So,
that's
so
where
I'm not
he's
quite on that level, right? But even I can't imagine. That's like me saying I want to go be a chemist right now.
so you forgot a couple people. I mean, I know you're talking about NBA, but
Yeah,
Chad Ochocinco just released an ad where he's rapping on the in the ad for that. Is it FanDuel or one of those?
I believe it was FanDuel.
Um,
I may be wrong, but I think it was.
and yeah, so but I mean, it didn't seem like just a tossed off funny. It seemed like if somebody came up to Ochocinco and said, "Hey, make an album," I bet you he would do it. And you forgot about Ice Cube's basketball league. Now that's a little bit different.
Yeah, it's a little bit different.
That's actually, I think, a more practical way to go with this. But I was going to say that clearly people who get to this level of accomplishment, they want to maintain some kind of fantasy of something they want it to be, and this is their way of kind of like re-experiencing the magic of trying to get to the mountaintop. You could also just say they're bored. In Kevin Durant's case, I think for all the accolades we shower on him, I think he is going to be remembered as somebody who underachieved because of some decisions he made, that he could have had like a Jordan-esque kind of run and fell short of that because of his judgment. So I think there's going to be that. It's like, my God, you were so amazing. And you kind of, there's always going to be questions about, did you really get everything out of your career that you could have? And he's clearly bothered by, he's one of the most thin-skinned or sensitive or seemingly thin-skinned, reactive to the way he's perceived. So it's like, I automatically default to, man, what does this guy need to be fulfilled? Because he's always sort of on the defensive, defending himself, sounds beleaguered all the time, kind of miserable a lot of the time, actually, for all of that, which is a shame, right?
Mhm.
Um, but then I think in the most flattering light, these people like to challenge themselves. So let them, why not? They like to climb. They've climbed mountains. This is what they do for a living. All the people you mentioned, they can all say, yo, we fucking climb Mount Everest for a living. And so when you climb Mount Everest, you're going to go to the other mountain and fall on your ass. All right, we'll do it. Maybe they like the risk of failure. It turns them on in some way, maybe.
Yeah, I can certainly see it that way. I think, and another one of those great points that you made there was that I think we underestimate how being rich and being famous is isolating.
Yes. Yes.
And when you are isolated and you're in a fishbowl, you're at the center of a fishbowl, and everybody's glaring at you all the time, I think your perspective gets twisted.
I mean, how can it not? We see the proof of that perspective getting twisted.
And this is no doubt a case of that.
Because
He's a passable rapper on a cipher with friends. You know, it's not his thing. Like, I'm not a
no.
bodybuilder. At a certain point, you got to give up the dream.
Yeah, I mean, see, it would have been cool if a producer that he hired had the nerve to be like, no, 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 I need to push you harder, or you need to push yourself harder.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, listen, Eazy-E was a shitty rapper, and look what he got out of it. But that's because Ice Cube and Dre were pushing him. They had to overdub him line by line. His sense of rhythm is horrible. When you see him on the Arsenio Hall show, they did the Arsenio Hall after Ice Cube quit. He does not have timing. He's got the whitest sense of timing of any rapper ever. But I mean, but you can still get something artistic out of it, is what I'm saying. Why couldn't his producer push more? Because maybe is he going to keep a guy around like that? Is going to be like, no, 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 no. I mean, if you're in a studio with somebody, it can be a very like drill sergeant kind of experience. Like it can be grueling. And I would hope Kevin Durant craves that, but is that what he got here? Or is that guy just psyched to have the gig?
To step back for a moment there, you've worked in studios
I've worked in one studio, yes.
and you've interviewed countless musicians.
Hmm.
Tell me about that drill sergeant kind of experience. Have you observed it? Have you heard
I've been in it.
people
I've
talk about it?
been fucking. I'm like, look, I, I mean, by any measure, I'm a high conflict personality. And in a creative situation, I think conflict is important. It doesn't have to be that way. There's sessions where are smooth, and that's nice too. But there are times when you really have to go to the mat for an idea that other people are resistant to. Now, as a producer, you are there to midwife, foster someone else's creation, but you have to fight them sometimes to get out of the way. Like I'm not the type of like collaborator that's like, no, 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 I'm the producer, so I know best, right? I don't look at the role of I look at the producer as a collaborator, and they are you drive your car, which is your creative vision. You say, hey, take the wheel for us. We're in the car with you, so we can all get someplace together that we couldn't have gotten on our own. But there are times when you have to really push against an artist's all sorts of tendencies, and you have to be in command of that situation. You have to tell people to leave the fucking room because they're driving you crazy playing video games in the back. I one time had a guy do jumping or jump rope for a while because he would sing and play drums at the same time. So I wanted him winded, and he did it, and he still teases me about it to this day. But yeah, man, you got to throw down sometimes, and I like that. So, but I mean, is Kevin Durant's producer gonna push him the way a coach would? Probably not.
Definitely unlikely. Starstruck is what I would expect that experience to be.
Happy to
For
be
me.
on the payroll.
Mhm.
You know, like this. I'm sure just for show, I would think just for showing up and being in Kevin Durant's airspace, you're getting as much as some people need in a year to
Mhm.
survive. So
Sure.
you're gonna rock that boat. I mean, I would. I think it'd be great. I mean, it's like, or you want to sit down and say, hey, what do you want to get out of this? Do you want to just put out a rap song that's kind of like looked at with pity and is like a news cycle kind of splash? Or do you want to push? I mean, you spent your whole life pushing towards something. Why not try here? I think people would respect that more than it sounds like a teenager, doesn't it? Like somebody's SoundCloud thing that
Definitely
they did in the
SoundCloud rapper vibes for sure.
yeah.
Speaking of respect and or lack thereof, just before we hit play, maybe a half hour before, you shared with me a piece of audio that stopped me in my tracks, largely because I am a public radio vet and I am a media junkie, hence the name of the show. And anyone who's watched any of this stuff, it's clear I'm obsessed with this stuff. And I would like to go there if you're down for it.
Totally. This is, of course, I thought of you with this. This is like this could have been your life story, except that you don't rap. That's the thing.
Or say
So,
the N word.
right, 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 right. Actually, for you, it would have worked the other way because you would have had too much public broadcasting cred. You're not Kevin Durant. That's the point. You're not trying to make a record out here. So this couldn't have happened to you, but you could have been easily involved in a situation or in the building for a situation like this. This is
without
like
a doubt.
you've lived this shit.
Yeah, and just about when you talk to other public radio veterans in larger markets and smaller markets, it is essentially the same. It is the same environment, the same kind of people, the same kind of temperament. It's not a negative thing. It's just a very specific thing. It's generally a very lefty thing. And I think what we're about to go into is pretty self-explanatory. Or do you think there should be something that we should say to set this one up?
No. I mean, so this is a segment from the this is a premium paid only podcast of Blocked and Reported episode. It just aired yesterday, actually posted yesterday, hosted by Katie Herzog and Jesse Single. I'm a paid subscriber to their podcast. I love their podcast. I love their banter. I think it's so engaging to listen to. I cut out a lot of their humorous banter, but Katie Herzog sets up this story and she explains everything in this audio clip. So shout out to them. I would highly recommend that you become a paid member, or at least check out their free podcasts on their Substack, blockedandreported.substack.com, and see if you like it. And then you get premium episodes like this.
Yeah, Bar Pod. And shout out to Katie and Jesse. I am a fan of their show as well. I haven't listened as much recently, but I think they do an excellent job. They have drilled down to a very specific online controversy, media-ish kind of niche.
Yeah, I mean, and they've become an essential part of my media diet. Like, I love listening to them when I walk to go to take my daughter to drop her off at school. And there's all the parts where they're making fun of each other. I cut those out of this clip, but there's a lot of that in their reports. Their timing with each other, they're like a comic duo.
Yeah,
I think,
yeah, I agree. They get each other, and they play off each other very well, and they know how to push each other too. And I really enjoy that about that show. I'm kind of feeling bad. I don't have premium. Maybe I should join them with premium. But I'll consider that off air.
We're going to quickly follow up on the ongoing personnel saga at WHYY Philadelphia's public radio station.
We produced a brilliant episode. It was about Jad Slayman, who's this comedian who worked at a public radio station and basically got fired because he made jokes people in his office found offensive, particularly management. He made jokes.
And he was not making the jokes in the office.
Sorry, yeah, I told that story horribly. He was a stand-up comedian.
He was.
We're not going to re-record this
at work.
Yeah, he was. Sorry, he did stand up on the side, and folks should just listen to the episode. We got amazing audio of this like judge trying to explain his jokes and his station management. End of the day, he was reinstated to his job, and this was high stakes for him because he has health problems, and he was fired under what seemed to be pretty ridiculous, for lack of a better word, cancel culture-y circumstances.
Right. So after going through this arbitration process with WHYY, Jad got his job back, at least briefly, but something else came out of this. So one of the complaints against Jad was that he used the term raghead in his act. Now, he's Arabic, born to a Muslim family. I don't know if he's actually a practicing Muslim, but Jad and the union that represented him argued in this arbitration, like basically he's allowed to use the term raghead because he is himself a raghead.
I wanted to stop there because I've thought about this a lot. We've talked about this actually online a fair bit as well, and I want to get a vibe check on you with this kind of concept. I'm black. Should I, in your perspective, should I have free reign to use the N-word here or there or any way which I choose.
I think there is a sort of common sense context cue kind of recognition. I think it's sort of understood. It's just a matter of sort of just general etiquette that people in a group are going to use a term to defang its to take the venom out of it. And they're often going to do it ironically with humor. So the short answer is yes, I do. Um, you can just sort of tell in certain situations people are going to call each other in that in group that thing, and it's meant lighthearted, and I do think it is often a successful repurposing of a slur.
I have no problem with other people using the word. I choose not to.
Mm. You know, I'm coming around on that finally after like 40 years of thinking that people should use it. The not the hard R,
Mhm.
but we can.
Change your mind.
I'm coming around. I'm less. I mean, I am not comfortable using it around people I don't know who use it, like people that I grew up around. Um, but yeah, and I don't want to unpack all that, but it just seems maybe like it's time. What I really don't like though is, and this gets to the flip side of your question, what I really don't like is rappers using it and then all of the rest of us doing this fucking charade where it gets censored out of,
Mhm.
gets bleeped out,
Mhm.
and um the people that work in public broadcasting aren't tuned in enough to not see that as a slur themselves. And when news media reports on it, they always report that it's a slur, whether it's being used in the familiar sense or not. And I can't stand this idea that, oh, we're going to put this in our lyrics, but if you're not black, you can't even rhyme along with this song that you're bumping in your car, and you have to fucking censor yourself. That whole Chris Rock skit, that pisses me off.
It's performance theater.
That's exactly
It's
what Glenn Lowry and John McWhorter just called it when they talked about this issue. Slightly different context, not rap music, but well, they did bring it up actually. Um, yeah, it's like you're supposed to bleep yourself. Like, man, get the fuck out of here.
Mhm.
Just so that somebody can say, we can use this word and you can. It's like titillating themselves and the audience, right? There's this forbidden word. That really bothers me.
Yeah, and there I came to that conclusion. What was his name of the song? Last Call, I think it was called.
By who?
I think it was an Outkast song. And if you it starts with I think it's Outkast and Little John.
Mm,
And if you listen to the very beginning of the song, it is and we're this over and over again. It's catchy as fuck. And I was like, I at that moment I had contorted myself to feel bad about enjoying this. And
oh
then I was
wow,
like,
you were really PC.
and then I thought, what the hell was like, what am I doing? Like, well,
Robbing yourself of musical pleasure.
yeah, like that's just silly.
I mean, to that extent. So how old are you? Were you a teenager?
No, I was in like college.
There are moments like that we all have with music. You're like, should I be enjoying this? Like when I heard Slayer's "Angel of Death," which is the litany of Holocaust atrocities in that song, and I was 15, and I was like, I don't know, this is. But ultimately, I decided to enjoy the music. I think that's fine, and I think that I like that young people will stop and consider, what am I ingesting? But in a case like that, it's like you can't have that music. And the other thing is, NWA in particular were very savvy. Eazy-E wanted white America. He wanted like the everybody using the word in the context of his band. Like Eazy-E wanted to tour with Guns N' Roses after they had their controversy when Axl Rose used the word nigger. Police and niggers don't mean a thing to me, I think in the song Just a Little Patience, is it called? So, and so much of the audience for hip hop is white. So you got a bunch of white suburban kids in the 90s hearing this stuff. They're going to think it's okay. And so now we're saying, "Oh, no, 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 no." There's something so convoluted, and it's puritanical. It's like, oh, I can't enjoy music. Oh, don't let me do it. You're going to go into the closet to like enjoy a song. How
Yeah.
ridiculous and how
Yeah.
distinctly American is that?
And that's why I changed my mind. That logic lays it out precisely. It's silly. I'm policing myself for what? And so I'm just going to enjoy this, and we can go deeper in it another time. I'd like to go further down this.
Yes, because
rabbit hole.
this has such a great punchline, this story.
Yeah. I'm going to play this for you. Okay. Back to.
And I love how they're laughing. Like so many times they're like laughing while they're talking about this.
Yeah, I think you should make fun of it.
So, like, it's not offensive when you're referring to your own group, the same way that I can call myself a dyke, you can call yourself a kike. And then, so during this arbitration process, the union asked if that was allowed. Like, are in-groups allowed to use these in-group terms?
All right. Once again, there is not. All right. I
love how a union is wrestling with this. It's like an HR issue. But this comedian is getting fired for comedy bits he's doing outside of work.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen the bits, but he's using the term raghead ironically.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah,
Jesus
I'll be
Christ.
shocked if a public radio employee was not. It's not impossible. I know a few that are not super PC but odds are pretty strong it was using it ironically, or just a pure like something that was a light tap, if anything.
Right.
I also loathe the fact that the policing of language, the outside of work thing. I know that work is a privilege. When you work for an organization, it's no guarantee. There's no guarantee, but I wouldn't want to work for a company that would demand that I police my language in my activities away from work,
Especially in creative. Sorry, you said I'm not
working for you when I'm on stage, or when I'm with my friends and family, or when I'm at the cafe. I can understand you retaliating. I can get that. I understand. You have the right to retaliate.
Well, that's what my mom always said. When you leave this house, you're representing me by the way you look. So comb your fucking hair. She didn't say fucking, but right. So that's.
I think my mom would say very similar things. When she sees me with my beard right now, she does not like it because she thinks I'm representing her.
Mm-hmm.
But and she like the employer, they can make choices.
You can lobby. You can certainly push that argument, and it depends on the situation, right? Like if you and I are going with our moms to a wedding.
Mm-hmm.
Then that's an appropriate time to invoke that parental authority clause. Like, you are my property, kind of. You are my proprietary rights over you do extend further than you might think, right? But in the context of art, say this comedian Jad had done a painting with the term raghead in it, but it was all
Mhm.
about like the pain of, it was basically an NPR fucking segment about the pain that children of Arabic parents have to go through when they're called raghead by these bully white kids. They would have fucking like lapped that shit up like kittens to milk.
Not only that, it's a very interesting thing because I didn't bring up Jon Stewart, but he made his big return.
With
And
two guns shooting.
at, yeah, both sides of the aisle, right?
Right.
And,
Yeah.
and it also gets in what he said there gets into something we'll get to a bit later. But in that case, it's almost the inverse of this one because you have a comedian saying something that the orthodoxy it won't admit, and because he is a comedian, he gets away with it. In this case, as a comedian, they're saying that, oh yeah, even as a comedian, you can't get away with it,
Mm-hmm.
even if you're saying it with a comic sensibility. It's it strikes me as one of those Ouroboros liberal Ouroboros situations where you're sort of just eating yourself alive.
Well, and that's
You're-
illustrated perfectly as they continue to talk about how this story unfolds.
yeah, and we'll go right back there.
And the WHYY executives were like, no, we never tolerate this. And then so Jad's side played audio of another WHYY employee, a guy named Amir Richardson. He's a rapper. He performs as the Bull Bay in Philly. He's pretty well known in the Philly rap scene. He had a song on, oh, fuck, what is that TV show called? Abbott Elementary. So he's a well-known rapper in Philly, and he uses the N-word with impunity on his raps. So Jad's side plays this audio, and WHYY was basically trapped at that point because they just said the Arabic guy can't use the term raghead, and now they have tape of the black guy using the N-word. So after
Before we proceed, I think I've used this term with you before. I'm not sure I've used this in this context, but but there's a concept called the progressive stack
Mm-hmm.
that illustrates what's happened here. Basically, it's whether it's your race and by disability and by sexuality, you're essentially putting a series of traits on a ladder,
Ranking.
ranking them, and when you're in a circle or in a group, as I first encountered this about 15 years ago, longer actually.
Much to your horror, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah. I was in this room. It was me, and it was a bunch of white people and an Asian guy, and I was going first, the Asian guy was going second, and all the white people were going after us. And I'm just there. And I'm like, why? I just got here. Why am I going first all the time? And they just said stack. I'm like, what's a stack?
God.
I don't know what a stack is.
Wow. What I like about this story, though, is that deference made you uncomfortable. See, unfortunately, too many people take the bait, and they like the power that it gives them.
And how this intertwines is that is now embedded in an institution.
Although the trans people would trump and the
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
and women. Well, the trans people would trump women, who would trump black women would trump you,
Mhm.
and then so you're way down the stack now, close to the Asian guy who's now white adjacent. So you better watch it.
Yeah. It is a thing that I've heard recently. Black men are the face of white supremacy or something like this.
Yes, I forgot that, but yes, I know what you're referring to. And what's amazing about this is that the stack is enforced by who? Who are the wardens of the stack? The people that work at places like NPR.
Yeah.
And run in our activists friend circle.
Yeah. So this is I fear for our future that this is embedded in an institution like this. It's not surprising.
I
but it
don't
doesn't-
fear.
It's going to. It's got to implode, I would think. But
Yes, stories like this are going to make it implode, and I also think it's hilarious too. I find it entertaining.
well, after I say that, I'm stopping myself because NPR is incredibly strong, and I think some of these worlds are so insular. As another point I will get to later, I'm gonna dive into a very insular world that it might not matter, but I fear that about this being just in the fabric, in the wallpaper of all.
I mean, yes,
areas.
it is.
Our
It's ambient in our interpersonal like airspace. That I think you're right on. It's not ever. We're not gonna like be able to Lysol the molecules of this out of the air. It's just here, and there's a certain type of person or certain demographic of person, and also certain type of situation that you're always going to have to sort of dance around this. But I think it's easy to kind of do jujitsu and get out of it. Like I think
I hope so. I'm gonna need it.
you sure will.
Afterwards, they demanded that Richardson, who I heard was a star employee at the station, they demanded that he take the offending raps off of social media. And rather than do that, he resigned.
It's so bizarre. It's just like, it's just funny because it's sort of the natural endpoint of all this. Like,
Totally.
you're making a black employee resign for his raps.
Right.
That's crazy.
I mean, I would guess that the next thing you know, Terry Gross is going to be fired for calling herself a Jewess.
I'm guessing WHYY is not exactly a wash in cash at the moment, and they seem to be spending a huge amount of time, I guess, policing their different employees of color's use of slurs against themselves. I would love someone to do an accounting of how much money they've spent on this, because like, if you're going to donate to this station, it's probably going to like the N-word defense fund or
All right. That's probably the most salient point and the biggest hope I get from this. In order to accurately police this kind of thing, and it's a thing I've encountered in a lot of ways, and I won't go into them, but I've encountered this in a lot of ways. If you're going to have a policy, you had better have a way to enforce it and police it. If you can't police it, then why are you having a fucking policy?
Well, and also it's going to cost you a lot in legal fees because the employees of color are going to fight back.
Without a doubt.
And the union is going to fight back on their behalf.
Yeah.
And you get this twisted logic. And all one of these employees has to do is be like, use that same mindset against them, right? Like use those. It's like, well, I was marginalized from my job, and this is yet another example of white supremacy. You can take that tack, or you can just be like, this is dumb. Look, the people that are most affected by this are people of color. How fucking like handicapped is this to be doing that? I was going to say retarded, which I think we need to bring that word back, but
All right, I'll finish off the clip.
that might be it. That's it. Yeah, no, he said,
That's all.
One thing that I cut out though was Katie Herzog explained that Sarah Glover, who's the VP of News and Civic Dialogue at WHYY, after Amir Richardson, the rapper, resigned, she sent an office-wide email saying goodbye to him and wishing him well. And then Jad, the comedian, replied all and said that she forced him out.
Wow.
Oh, and Sarah Glover's black, by the way.
Not surprised. Yeah, that sounds about right.
So,
Yeah. I would like to take this transition point to go to the Super Bowl. About a hard switch, but I think it's well worth our time, I think. Super Bowl 58 was on Sunday. My heart was broken as I watched Pat Mahomes hoist the Lombardi Trophy and suffered through Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce's triumph. It was the most watched event in America since the moon landing.
mm,
It averaged 123 million viewers, the most watched telecast for one single network ever. And at one point in the game, 202 million people watched some of the game. What the hell's happening here, Sabby?
I don't know. I mean, can you compare to the most? Do you have the analytics on what the next highest Super Bowl rankings were? Because I just assumed it grows every year. So
It
I didn't
doesn't.
real.
No, it doesn't.
Okay,
Work.
okay. So I wasn't aware of this. It has to have something to do with Taylor Swift, of course. I mean, you would think like that's a good place to start, no?
I'm sure she played a role. Look, I don't want to give her all the credit. I mean, I think, man, I think that she has been a magnet for more women, and we can see that in the data, for more women coming to the NFL this year. And I can't deny that. But I wouldn't give her all the credit. I think the fact that it went to overtime probably did it. I think we saw the peak as it is typically in the halftime show. That was a pretty high peak. It was nearly 130 million viewers who wanted to watch Usher for some reason. And I don't hate Usher. I really don't. But I think he was just... It's not something that truly enthralls me. You know,
Well, and
the idea of Usher.
also they seem to pick like legacy people that are at least 10 years removed from their peak relevance. At
Yes,
least, right? Sometimes
perfectly.
decades. Um, I had no issue with the halftime show. I thought it was really entertaining. I mean, as you know, if you're going to serve me a Twinkie or a McDonald's cheeseburger, I'll take it. And that's not a knock on him, but it was as entertaining as I could hope. It wasn't like Prince, right? But um, I was cool with it. I'm just wonder why Usher would draw. I mean, do young people watch the Super Bowl, or do they just like tune into meme clips afterwards?
Yeah, the NFL is the only sport in America that's strong across just about every group.
Okay.
And their weak spot was women, and that's the Taylor Swift factor.
Mhm.
So that's where I can't not give her any credit.
I mean, could it be that it was the top two expected teams to make it before the season? I mean,
I
some of this has to have to do with football, doesn't it?
I think it's more... I think Pat Mahomes has a very big part of this equation.
As being the new Jordan kind of figure.
Not so much that being the Jordan type of figure. I think that's kind of overblown, but I think he is a national figure in a way that a lot of artists are not.
Mhm.
So this is I just pulled up the Super Bowl, the top numbers of all the...
Okay, well, last year's was the third. It's the next on the list, but yeah, you go all the way back to 2015. But then the year before that was the fifth on the list. So I mean,
Yeah. But
Richard
you go
Nixon's
back into it.
resignation speech. That's
Well,
great.
it was a giant deal.
Mass
Yeah, but
Year's
if you go
finale,
back,
I remember that. But I mean,
but if
all the rest of those are Super Bowls, and a lot of them are fairly recent. So,
fairly recent, but you also get into 2018 is 103. That's a
mm,
significant drop. And if you go back into, I've seen lists that go back into the 2000s, we got under 100 for a
mm,
while.
mm.
And in the 90s, we were under 100. So we have seen this ascendancy of football. So as truly one of the few things in the world that is a universal or near universal thing, we had nearly 2/3 of the population watch some of this. So it is one of the few things that brings us all together, strangely enough.
Sure.
And I struggle with it, honestly, not because I don't love football. I love football. I just, it surprises me that I know and we've talked a bit about this before about the lack of monoculture and everything else sort of falling off.
Hmm.
But man, it, as you noticed in these numbers, you know,
I mean,
it,
Super Bowl,
it's
Super Bowl, Super Bowl, Super
it's
Bowl, Nixon,
ascending.
moon
These
landing,
these numbers are ascending
more or
for the most,
less. Yeah, yeah,
more or
yeah.
less.
On a trend
The,
up for sure. Yeah, yeah.
the trend is upward in an era where the trend is downward everywhere else. The only real comparison, and I do have that as well, is the World Cup final in 2018. Around the world, it attracted 1 billion people.
Wow.
Um, and those two seem to be the only two events that are on par or somewhat on par.
I mean, I don't think this is a mystery. These are the last vestiges of shared moments, as you were just hinting at, right? I mean, and those are the two sports that have like an iron grip on their respective audiences. The World Cup, the soccer is more global of that status, right? It's like all over except here. But, you know, football is number one with a bullet. So it doesn't surprise me.
There it was an interesting tweet that that left something out that all this, this us media geeks sort of like crowing about this that we left out, because has been one change. Yes, Sunday Super Bowl was the most watched American broadcast since the Apollo 11 moon landing, but first moon landing was watched by 64% of America. Super Bowl 58 was watched by 37% of America.
Right. And you're saying that at some point it tipped higher to like close to 2/3 of the population, but
Well, watch some of it.
right,
We're
right,
talking about
right,
the average.
right, right. You're talking
So
about
we're
people
talking
who
about the
watch the game
on
more or less.
average is
Right,
the
right,
number that he's referring toward. He's
right.
that 123 million number.
Hmm.
So what this drives me to is that even in the one thing that brings us together, we're not even talking about 40% of the population.
Mm.
Watch it on average.
And how many percentage of NPR/PBS/WHYY audience were watching the game? Probably more like 10% or something lower, maybe lower.
More than average, but yeah. Yeah, it is. It speaks to, and I think we're going to get to it as we get into the next couple pieces that we're going to tackle. We're in such this like hyper divide, and the gulf just seems to be widening and widening and widening. even in the
Well,
moment that we come together.
yes, and if I may, so I went to a Super Bowl party at a good friend of mine's who you also know, and I had a lovely, lovely time. I was so thrilled to be invited. I was invited at my next door neighbors too, and that would have been awesome. But you know, I got a text. So there was some of this there. Got a text beforehand that somebody there uses they them pronouns from the hostess. But the hostess was like, but this person's cool about it, like not super uptight and wanting people to. And actually, um, I was sent home with this person's amazing stuffed jalapeno peppers were like the hit of the party, and I was just like gobbling them up. So our friend gave them all to me to take home. But so I thought, okay, you know, and then the hostess, dear, dear, dear friend of mine, really, really like a sister, truly like a sister to me. And she brought up Naomi Wolf's book, Doppelganger, criticizing Naomi Klein. And I'm a big fan of Naomi Klein and all the work she's done to explore the science around the safety concerns with the COVID shots. And the sort of tone in the room just automatically, you know, I wasn't about to like litigate COVID jabs at a fucking Super Bowl party, but I did say, I was like, okay, just so you know, there's a counter argument there in that book. You know, there's issues with that book, blah, blah, blah. And it just kind of like glazed, just people just kind of glazed over. And I could see there's just a culture of interpreting certain things. You bring up COVID jabs, conspiracy theories, automatically you're consigned to like the right wing loony, what they see as right wing extremist column, and there's a bunch of things like that. And I had an awesome time. These are friends of mine, but there is this divide. There's this like ambient language barrier, right? That even trying to explain something from a different you have to hack through this like thick rock wall of bias. And it's like, well, I can tell what media sources you've been into. You know, I can tell what feeding tube is coming into your head. And again, I didn't argue it, you know, not the time or place. But you encounter these things even in these situations, and all sorts of little biases like that. You can sort of tell people are coming from that WHYY curated. They're wearing those VR glasses on as they look out onto the world.
2 points. One, on the VR glasses, that one nearly made the cut for me, and it's something that I want to go back to on another occasion. I have lots to say about this, holding that off. Number one, I took from your anecdote something different.
Mm.
That glazed over look that you saw,
Mm-hmm.
I think the Super Bowl and Super Bowl parties have become an escape from the rest of all that stuff. And it's not that fights can't happen, but I've noticed from my experience that they've happened less for me.
Yeah, there was no fight here.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I walked
But
away.
You don't even go to that place where all that stuff that would have been a thing if it were a Tuesday at
a bar.
At a bar or
I
something.
think it would have been a fight. I think it would have been, yeah.
You don't want to do it now because this is one of those rare moments where we are together sharing a thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things that don't exist as much anymore.
No. I mean, where else? You know, unless you're parenting like your kid in a sports league or something, but even then, you know, I mean, I have these moments at the playground when my daughter gets out of school. There's a couple of afternoons where I hang out with the other parents. I do it with the moms on one day and with the dads on the other, and it's an awesome contrast. And a lot of this stuff comes up, but you know, I know sort of where to drop in with something like not to push somebody beyond their what they can sort of tolerate in any given moment, right? I'm pretty like I read the room. Um, it's you what you're saying is totally true because I walked away from the party thinking, oh wow, we can be together again with people we like. I didn't like the idea of having to be told ahead of time, notified that somebody uses they them. I don't use they them pronouns. It's too awkward grammatically. I'll just call the person by their name. Even in my writing, I always get around it by just using the person's name. But at the same time, I'm eating this person's jalapeno peppers, getting to know them, hugging this person when they left, and like I was like, man, this can work. But you're right. When else is it going to work other than the Super Bowl?
And just want to take a moment to say shout out to our Twitter X listeners. I meant to connect you earlier in the conversation. We've been going for about an hour, but welcome to the conversation now. From here, in this, as we talked about divisive things and moments, well, let's go to the moment that happened in Kansas City after the Super Bowl. Want to shepherd us through this, Sabby?
Yeah, so at the Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl victory parade, there was what is technically describable as a mass shooting, although I want to get into the use of that term. There was apparently, or at least is being reported, a dispute between two sets of kids or minors. And I'm not sure what kinds of guns they had, but they started shooting at each other after a dispute, and that resulted in one lady being killed, 22 people being injured, several injured children. Several of those children were shot. I believe some of them were also injured in like the reaction, getting trampled or something. And I can't help but think there is a symbolism to this that will ring out in history forever. It's just so the Super Bowl and gun violence coming together in this moment. I have a sense you will downplay that, but in terms of how it will be looked at from forever on out. And Nick Wright, who is someone I'm a fan of, although I've given him shit on Twitter, probably so impolitely that if he or anybody on the show saw it, they wouldn't think it was cool at all. He taunts fan bases. He has a real hard on for taunting the Bills. And what's interesting is I don't think he needs to perform this troll act to be engaging. He's a really engaging, fun broadcaster who takes on this kind of shitty dick. This like he just is just the dick to people and that's part of his shtick. This monologue of his nearly brought me to tears. He was there, the whole crew, the whole First Things First crew. Nick Wright, Chris Broussard, my favorite broadcaster, by the way, Chris Broussard, Kevin Wildes, they were all there when it happened. They were covering it. And I got to say, man, I do feel bad for him and everybody else. Like you're there to celebrate something, a shared moment of joy, and it devolves into this. But I have a lot of thoughts on how this is being reacted to.
So we'll play some of the monologue.
So I'm gonna tell you guys about the times my family first saw me cry, because there's a chance you guys are gonna see me cry for the first time. For Diora, my older daughter, it was December of 2012 in the lobby of her school when she was 7 years old, when I went to pick her up the day of Sandy Hook. And that day, of course, someone with a lightweight semi-automatic rifle shot around 24 kids her age, and I saw her in that lobby, and I immediately started sobbing. It's the first time she ever saw me cry. My youngest daughter, Deanna, who's been on this show, who everyone here knows really well, first time she ever saw me cry was March of 2022 in our kitchen, when I opened up Twitter and saw what had happened at Robb Elementary. And someone with a lightweight semi-automatic rifle shot around 24 people that were her age. And I sobbed. And she was concerned. She didn't know. I just, like, it was so, and I'm not a big crier, nothing against it, but I sobbed. And yesterday, shortly after, a few kids themselves with lightweight semi-automatic rifles shot around 24 people. My wife saw me cry in a way I haven't. And it wasn't when at the parade. It wasn't on the walk over. It was at the hotel. Once we had gotten to the safety of our room, we're at the elevator. And there was this little old lady who was on the phone fighting back tears, wearing a Chiefs shirt. And she saw me and knew us, knew the show, and came over and gave me a hug and started crying. And I still didn't cry yet. And then we talked. And she said she was there with her kids and grandkids. And her, I believe she said, 14-year-old granddaughter had to take the lead because she's been trained for this. And the adults hadn't. And I cried. And I cried because it's so god-dog cruel what we've taken from this generation of kids that we all got. Listen, yesterday, Wilds is right, we're lucky, but yesterday was also the single worst 10 seconds of my life. And it was not when we heard the gunshot and were told to get down, and it was not the part that is seared into my memory from a selfish perspective is the time between them telling us active shooter and me finding in the crowd ostensibly where the shooter was, my wife, my sister-in-law, and her best friend. Because that 10 seconds felt like it was 5 minutes. But that is such a different feeling than for these young kids who have now had to learn, drill, and experience what to do in a mass shooting situation before they lose their first tooth, before they have their first kiss. For those kids there yesterday, part of their childhood ended. And to your point, those are the kids that we consider lucky, the kids who didn't end up in hospital beds. And so I'm incredibly sad about this. And this is where I will pivot a bit. But I am furious. I'm furious because this is so clearly all our fault. And we have so clearly lost the plot so quickly. I understand now that at this point, talking about any type of regulations whatsoever on guns in America is verboten for some. But some of the strictest statewide gun regulations ever passed in this country were passed by Ronald Reagan.
Right.
And the assault weapons ban in the 90s was supported by Ronald Reagan, who is a paragon, for many on the conservative side of the aisle. We say when it comes to this particular topic, we turn ourselves into morons. We say ludicrous things like, why have laws? People break them. Like we make these arguments of, well, if you pass a law, only criminals will break the law. As if, okay, well then make selling meth legal because only meth dealers will break it. We trick ourselves into good guy with a gun. There were 800 good guys there yesterday. How many of them did we shake hands with before that we saw? There were uniformed police. You couldn't have had more good guys prepared, ready. And in an instant, there's nothing they can do until after the fact and mitigate the damage. And that's my home city. And the only thing that brings Kansas City together is the Chiefs. We are a divided city. We are a segregated city. The Chiefs is the only thing that brings it together. And the moment is shattered. And the state of Missouri as of October, was fighting at the Supreme Court to not allow local police to enforce federal gun laws. They were fighting against the local cops' ability to enforce federal gun laws. That's how insane we've gone. And what we will do is to just keep plowing ahead. We will continue with the wellness checks that my best friend in the world called me yesterday to check on me, just like I did for him 2 years ago when he was at a parade in Highland Park, Chicago, that got shot up on the 4th of July. And we'll just keep going with active shooter drills and a generation of kids who had this part of their life stolen from them, and throw our hands up and say, what can we do when we all know the answer? And so I
You mind if I ask a question first?
Not at all. This is your show, dude. No, not at all.
What's the answer?
Well, if you'll allow me, I think what's the question? Is Nick right and so much of the sports media industrial complex asking the right questions here? Full disclosure, I've come around on guns. I'm now essentially pro-gun, where I wasn't before, where I was much more vehemently on the side of gun regulations and could not understand the pro-gun position and could not fathom why this conversation was so irreconcilable. You always come to such an impasse. However, I am for sensible regulations. I don't quite understand the absolutist Second Amendment position. So I agree with Nick Wright's point that people do start saying incoherent things because we have regulation in every other facet of our lives. Here's the thing, though. So I saw responses like this. Jamel Hill, Mina Kimes, Joy Taylor tweeted similar kinds of things. This is being called a mass shooting, and I think we have to be more precise in our language. This is not a case of someone going into a crowd specifically with the intention of killing people. So it's not like those school shootings. I agree with Nick. I'm a parent, and I gotta fucking tell you, every day that I drop my daughter off at school, this is in the back of my mind. That something horrible like that could happen. And I'm getting around to what I think. I think there's a way. I'm not going to say I have the answer, but I have a suggestion that could be a way forward. But in this case, this is kids, by the way, whose faces have not been shown because in a lot of the footage of the people tackling one of the shooters, they blocked his face out. Why? Because he's not white. He's black. Did those kids obtain those guns legally through relaxed gun regulations in the state of Missouri? Probably not. Those kids have illegal guns, right? So that's one thing. They were being, somebody called into Chris Broussard's radio show with Rob Parker, somebody who said that they were very close and saw that these kids were starting shit with grownups. Then they got into it with each other. And this eyewitness said they were just shooting blind. He said he wouldn't have been surprised if some of them shot some of their own friends. So framing this as a gun control issue, when this is appears to be the quintessential case of people who got guns, and I don't know this for a fact, but I'm guessing they didn't get those guns from their parents who legally obtained them. That's misleading or it's misguided. What do you think of that? And I can continue, but I'm just curious to get your take so far.
It gets close to my biggest gripe and why I was dreading having this conversation, especially in the guise of sports media. I have to even back up a little bit further to get to my point. I'll bring him back up on the screen. This man, Nick Wright, is a clown. He is. He is a clown. He's an absolute total clown. He is a troll and an ass. He does it for good reason. He does it because it gets him attention. He does it because it gets him in the front of minds and in the back of minds of fan bases like my own. I'm a giant Bills fan, and he trolls the Bills as well all the time. It's not just
in a really.
let me finish here.
Oh, sorry.
It's not just because he trolls the Bills that I call him a clown. I call him a clown because that's how he portrays himself. He portrays himself as this paragon of knowledge, that this know-it-all. It's a whole shtick that all these guys use all the time. Here's the problem with them tackling an issue like this. This is not an issue that fits within the paint by numbers circumstance. All this guy does, and the people who are on these shows, like Stephen A., like Dan Lebitard, even my boys, Tony Kornheiser and Mike Wilbon, I love them. But here's what they do. They paint by numbers daily. Guns and gun control and violence are not issues that can be addressed by painting by numbers. So I feel for him. I feel for his family. I feel for that fan in the Chiefs uniform. Even as a Bills fan who was burned by them, I feel for them. It sucks. I would hate for that to happen. You know, I want them to lose, not to die. I get that. It's not something that I want to happen. But what's clear to me is that he doesn't have the chops nor the depth to handle an issue like this,
Or the will to do to do the homework.
Not just will, but he's playing a role, as I've told you repeatedly, and that role will not allow him to address deeper, more substantive issues. It's more about arguing whether LeBron James is the GOAT, whether Pat Mahomes is already better than Tom Brady, and what coach should be fired. He can't handle this.
No.
This ain't him.
And he would have been one of those people at the Super Bowl party I went to who similarly can't veer off the I don't want to call it ideological, but the track of exposure, the things they've been exposed to enough to even be able to receive dialogue on the issue that again does not paint by numbers. The reason I interrupted you is because I was going to ask you, and I think I know the answer, but does his mean-spiritedness towards fan bases bother you?
A little, but that's not my big gripe.
Right.
Because like a guy like Jim Rome has been mean-spirited forever. There's been plenty of guys who've been mean-spirited. And I realize, you know, especially as a broadcaster, you are playing a role. You are trying to drive people to listen to you, to watch you, to engage with you. I'm playing a role even right now. I'm a bit elevated, not crazy high, but I'm an elevated version of myself. It's part of the job. So the mean-spirited thing doesn't bug me. What bugs me is the know-it-all nature of the people on these programs, whether it is Shannon Sharp or Mad Dog Russo, who just got his extension. Stephen A. Screaming A is more appropriate. Skip Bayless, all these folks, the know-it-all nature about things they can't possibly know it all, that's what bugs me. Not just about them, but about everything.
And you said something I want to laser in on. The know-it-all nature about things they can't know at all is how I heard that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're right, because these sports commentators have been deployed to disseminate this kind of reaction and get people tweaked emotionally. Dude, I was almost on the verge of tears listening to it just now again because I'm sentimental, like I'm easily affected. But I also understand, and I'm not going to say he's doing that on purpose, but his network knows. Here's the glaring and kind of disgusting irony here. Days before this happened, Matt Barnes was on the Dan Lebitard show, casually remarking that Shannon Sharp should be careful in what he said about how he's going to pull up on Mike Epps. I'm not going to go into that whole story, comedian Mike Epps, because they had words, and Mike Epps said, listen, the All-Star game is in Indianapolis. That's my hometown. You pull up on me, I don't fight. The insinuation was, I got boys there that'll shoot you. Matt Barnes gets on the Dan Lebitard show. Dan Lebitard, I will say, is a fucking performer who I think cynically plays into exactly what you're talking about. He did not challenge Matt Barnes. Like, Matt Barnes was almost smirking, and I don't want to paint it in too bad of a light, but it's like there's so much of this, oh yeah, you should be cautious about what you say. And it's like, yo, would Shannon Sharp get shot? Shannon Sharp wasn't saying he was going to pull up and like fucking beat the guy up. He's just going to say, I'm pulling up to confront you on what you said. Let's talk it. You know, that the fact that Lebitard wouldn't challenge that, but then would perform all this outrage about this, when those two things are fucking related, the casualness with which Black youth are exposed to this idea, oh, well, you know, you roll up on me, I'm going to solve this with a gun. And I don't want to go too hard on someone like Matt Barnes. It's like, yo, do y'all understand the influence you have? But I think there's a real double standard there. And what's funny is after Matt Barnes did that, I almost recorded a video and I was like, well, do I want to really stick my fucking nose in this and get all the, you know, hassle from it? And then this happens. It's like, this is a direct result of the culture of Black young men being exposed to violence like it's nothing, I think. And then maybe that sounds like a pandering thing to say.
Part of it.
But
I think it's also the result of I think it's very the easy analog is what's going on down at the border, right? Let everybody in or don't let anybody in, build a wall or don't let everybody in, have a sanctuary city, and you can come here. Okay. It's really easy to talk about in either platitude. We should just seal off the country and not let people in unless we want them. Or we should just let everybody in, because sealing off the country is wrong. You could go either way. There's plenty of YouTube in online conversations in either direction.
And lots of grandstanding, like what you're saying about Nick, right? There's lots of grandstanding, what you're describing on that issue on either side.
Yeah. But it doesn't, neither one deals with the issue. The issue is multi-layered. The issue is that you had a bunch of people, not just people from Mexico. You know, you look at the reports, you have people from South America, from Latin America, people from Russia, people from Africa are coming through the border, and they're just flooding in. And we have a group of politicians who have decided that, hey, we're going to make everybody our place a sanctuary city, when it was 2 or 3 or 4 people. But they didn't realize that, hey, maybe someday it'll be thousands. And there's consequences for that. And as long as it's happening down there and it's not happening to me, it's okay. And then they're like, no, it can't happen here. Let's send them over there. But even all those things don't deal with the actual issue. The actual issue is we have to figure out how we're going to manage immigration in this country, which Democrats and Republicans have passed on for generation after generation after generation. Neither one wants to deal with the actual issue. The actual issue is that we don't have a sensible, thoughtful way to go about immigrating in this country. I have friends that have immigrated that have gone through the process. They've come here, and it's taken nearly a decade just to get everything in line, and they're in limbo for that time. That doesn't make any sense. It also doesn't make any sense to just let everybody walk in who wants to. You have to figure out what that middle ground is and build toward it. It's a similar thing on the gun tip. It's, look, like it or lump it, it's in our Constitution. Yes, things have been removed from our Constitution, including slavery. But, well, you think it's actually possible to remove it? Okay.
No, I think the resistance to this would be even more fierce than that. That's my guess.
I don't know, more fierce, but I think that might be a bit of an exaggeration, but I think it would be fierce, without a doubt. I don't think it'll be like, I don't think there would be a straight up, I don't think we'll have a war. I don't think so. Some people say we would, but I don't think it would get that far. Just my guess. But okay, odds are you're not going to be able to properly remove it from the Constitution. Therefore, we have a right to bear arms. Okay. There's a big stretch between, as no guns and guns. Okay, we know that we're going to have some guns. Okay, let's figure out which guns and how we're going to do it. It's not about getting rid of them all. It's about figuring out how we actually make a system that works and how and making it universal, which is another problem.
Huge.
These are you like, much like with sports, and part of me really wants to get into the sports game, because I don't see these guys and these people who address sports. They're not talking about fundamental stuff. They are talking about just the very top layer emotional stuff that'll get people engaged. They're not talking about the structural stuff that you have to work your way through to actually solve the issues.
Like what you have brought up before about not enough black head coaches in the NFL. You've talked about how that story is not, people are not talking about. They're talking about surface level storylines that they invent. They're not even getting past that.
Amen.
They're frosting the cake and then filming themselves and then talking about the frosting on the cake.
Amen.
It has nothing to do with the actual fucking cake itself. There's very little analysis of the sport.
So when a guy like Nick Reich decides that, hey, I'm going to spend 7-8 minutes breaking down this really tragic situation that I observed, and I believe he's from Kansas City or in that area.
Yes.
Yeah, in my hometown, this terrible thing happened. And I cried, and this was awful. And I'm afraid for my children, like you are. Full disclosure, not a parent. I don't have that experience, at least not yet. When you're not, it just comes off hollow.
Sanctimonious.
And it's the kind of thing that happens across this is the sports media, but it's kind of like when you watch, if you ever watch the Today Show have to talk about sports.
When Elmo's not getting strangled on there.
Yeah, like it's like, but you ever like have them like try to have like someone who's not a sports person, but they're excited about a thing and they have to talk about it.
Anchors don't local anchors have to do this a lot, and it sounds kind of hokey and stilted. Is that what you're getting at?
A little bit, but I'm not talking about local anchors. I'm talking a specific thing that I've seen on a lot of network television.
So I'm not familiar with it. What are you seeing there?
Cable TV, where it's like, oh yeah, our network has the rights to the NFL, so we have to talk to this football person. And I have no no interaction with football. I got no background with football, but I have to talk football with this person. And you get this sort of awkward, impassioned and try to, like interaction, but you don't get anything substantive.
No. And it sounds like someone's mom who doesn't know football talking about it.
Very much
Right?
so.
It's very
Yeah.
awkward. Like if a mom were talking to her football player's son's friends just to try to relate, and that how stilted that would sound,
Mhm.
you know?
So this is one of the reasons why when we have events like this overlap with sports in particular, it just drives me batty. It makes me not want to go near it because these guys, these women, their format is not made to handle that kind of things.
No, they didn't.
But theirs especially are not.
They didn't build their audience that way. And on the other side, I thought Jason Whitlock's tweet was equally reprehensible and simplistic and reductive. He's like, he replied to somebody else who said, real men or something. I'm paraphrasing, but aren't willing to sacrifice freedom for safety, which is a totally fucking one-dimensional. I'm sure Clay Travis hasn't handled this with any more sophistication than Nick Wright has. He's just stumping for his overlords what they want him to say.
Look,
or his constituents.
Look, I find Whitlock more interesting than Nick Wright or Clay Travis for a bunch of reasons. But at his core, he is also a clown. He is heightening his thoughts, his ideas. He's blowing them up, and he is speaking often extemporaneously for hours at a time. And he's rarely doing something that's actually constructive.
Mm-hmm. Rarely, yes. I mean, he's a wrestler. He's a wrestling villain.
Yeah. Like he's pro wrestling. Like,
and I mean, and I thought that point sucked. I thought it was like so not getting into what the complexity of the issue. Now, there is something that occurred to me, and I mean, if you're up for it, I can bounce it off you to see what your
go ahead
reaction is. So much as you're getting at the impasse around guns and a bunch of other issues as well is so stark that it seems impossible. I mean, it seems like the political will to try to have anything resembling a solution is not happening. So here's my suggestion. Could we take the side door? Because I think as someone who's come around on guns, progressives who are mostly against or almost, universally against guns, what they have to understand is that, wanting the state to take care of you and trusting the state to take care of you all the time and to have your best interests at heart is just not a practical way to live. Interestingly enough, my old boss at the recording studio, he is a staunch Democrat who is also staunchly NRA, and he says he gets shit from both for that. But I wonder, my solution is 3-tiered. Number one, what if everybody in the country joined the NRA? Then the conversation could move. I don't know what their lobbying sort of mission as an organization is. I don't know if they would even want that. I don't know if they prefer to have a more sort of predictable demographic be on board. But what if what if it just came with citizenship? You're a member of the NRA. Then what? So that's one thing. My friend Pete, the professor in North Carolina, said that Glenn Beck said the same thing. I haven't heard his clip. 2, what if youth were all trained on guns, all of them, before they were 18? Now, what this creates then is that means you're going to have a bunch of kids who are better at killing people. That's going to be a side. You're not going to limit the SSRI reuptake inhibitor people that zone out and then get depersonalized and go into a place and shoot, 50 people, not feeling like they're in their body. You're not going to eliminate that with this solution. But what you will do is potentially mitigate a lot of the youth culture chaos, like what we're seeing here with Kia Boys. Because kids want, particularly male kids, they want to be useful. The reason somebody's in a gang and willing to kill somebody else is because they just want something to follow and devote themselves to. You can say they're all fucked up in the head and blah, 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 and the internet has got them all whacked. But if you expose kids to the culture and the precision and the discipline and the adult interaction that it requires to learn how to use a firearm properly, I do think a lot of this type of shit that we saw at the Super Bowl parade could significantly be reduced. It's a fucking long shot, but it's something worth considering. The last thing is I heard Sarah Hayter suggest this to Meg and Dom on their podcast, Special Place in Hell. She was like, I definitely think we need some sort of mandatory military service for young people like they do in Israel, because this country's so divided. You need to sort of bring people together and just expose themselves to people not like them. You could fold this into that, like right after high school, before high school and college, you go do a year in the military, you get trained in how to operate firearms. I think it would alleviate a lot of the youth kind of just going crazy issue. That's my proposal. There's a lot of roadblocks to it. I don't think it's a magic bullet, to pardon the term, but it's something. What do you think?
I think part 2 is the most interesting of the bunch. There's an argument that I could make that part of the problem is with guns is that we've made them special. We have made them, and some, you could argue rightfully so. They're not, toys, but we treat them as this thing that you can obtain to reach power and status. Not everybody, but I could certainly see that if you're a kid, let's say a kid grew up in a neighborhood not unlike the ones I did, where you're seeing violence, you're seeing people get beat up, and you see guns. You see big, tall, strong people with guns. And it's like, wow, this person has a gun and they can act with impunity. They can do whatever they want. They don't have to go to school. They don't have to, go to work the way I work. No, they get to do pretty much whatever they want. Using that kind of prism. Obtaining one of these and using this as a way to solve your disputes, as I've gathered from this incident, that this is essentially it started with just a dispute. It wasn't an act of terrorism so much. It was
Right.
it was someone being awful and opening fire. If we could disconnect the two and say, hey, this is a thing that's baked into the structure of this country, it's baked into our law, and this is something that you should learn what the consequences of this. You should learn the power of this. That's interesting.
Lean into it is what I'm saying.
Yeah. That's
What
an
other
interesting
choice do we have?
Yeah, I think that's certainly where I am going as I think through your three options. That we're not, unless we're going to just throw out the Constitution, which I am not in a hurry to do.
And
It's
also,
not
what's
going anywhere.
right? And what's going to be the reaction to that, man? You're going to have these people that are really dug in on this. It's not going to be pretty. And then you're going to have state governments fighting it, as what Nick Wright was talking about there.
Sure.
I mean, why not go the other way? And here's the thing. This issue is almost impossible to talk about in a way that both left and right can actually see their shared interests. So take a side approach that makes it so that you're kind of playing into both of their values a little bit. You're saying to obviously people, gun culture people are going to appreciate this. Like they want, I would hope, right? Like it's like we're going to train all your kids on how to use guns. I would think gun culture people, pro-gun people would appreciate that. Maybe not, but I would think. And for people on the other side of it, it's like you're completely removed from this object. Like you said, it's almost like a forbidden fruit or something,
Mm-hmm.
right? Why don't you see what it's like to actually handle one yourself? And why don't you get involved so that you become part of the constituency that can shape policy or have a say in policy instead of just bashing your head against these people that are not hearing you?
And I want to also address your third suggestion, because I've had a similar thought, not because of this, but broadly about military service. And the fact that we are in constant war over the last 30 years, especially.
Right.
Going back further, pretty much, but 30 years, pretty solid with conflict after conflict after conflict. And if you, I believe it was, we went through not just, I think it was from the Obama administration. I recall reading that there wasn't a day where we weren't bombing anybody.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know,
Right. I mean, would you say that in the pop culture sense, we've been in constant war in terms of like the public's awareness since the 91 Super Bowl?
sounds about right. Yeah, yeah. And going into Kuwait. Yeah, sounds about right. So, as I think through these issues, I think that one of the reasons why we are more willing to get involved with these foreign entanglements is because it's not our kid. Because we don't have a draft.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is so easy to avoid military service. And I considered it, but I graduated from high school the year, well, I was a senior when 9/11 happened. And I was talking to recruits throughout my senior year, even after I got into Niagara. The best argument that this recruiter had for me, and one that I really thought about a lot, was he said, "Hey, I'm from Huntsville, Alabama." And he picked me up from the house and said, "I did it to get the hell away from Huntsville, Alabama. I got my education. I got to see the world. I got to go places that I never thought I could, that my brothers and sisters didn't get to go. and learn things that they couldn't possibly, think was possible. And I look at you and I see a guy who wants to escape.
Mm.
And that was true. I wanted to get the hell out of Dodge. I did, not for a very long time, but I did for a while. That's how I ended up at my college. What we have done by getting rid of the draft is relying on largely a very poor population to staff our military. And what has happened with our government is that we are just throwing them around the world, cannon fodder. And if it was everybody sharing it, much like what's starting to happen with immigration, where now we have both the southern states and states all across the union are all sharing the impact of this, I think we'd be a lot less likely to get in the war. And the backlash, the fight, would be a lot more intense.
Mm.
Because it's not just a small percentage of the population that's going to come back in coffins.
Mm-hmm.
It's the rich man's kid and kids that grew up like me. That's how I got to your argument. I think it's a fair argument, as a uniting force, but I think it's a similar thought.
Yeah, and I also think it would give people a lot of vocational training right out of high school. You get skills there,
Which is badly needed.
including how to handle a gun. My Lyft driver yesterday is a Hispanic lady, former Marine, who told me she takes her retired Marine who takes her grandson camping and shows him how to use a gun. And she says she's very disciplined about it. He's only allowed at certain times when they're shooting. In specific cases, it's, so I think getting over this fear, because they're not going anywhere. Even if you change the laws tomorrow, there's more guns than people. And I don't like that. I don't love guns, but I think they are a necessary evil or a necessary fact of life. I mean, you can't exist in a world where other people have them and you don't. Or you're just existing on a prayer. And the other thing, you talked about these kids, you said what they did was horrible. I mean, it's stupid. It's like I could see a fucking teenage boy doing shit like that and not grasping the consequences, because teenage boys are dumb and do idiotic things without structure to catch them. And if you have them trained, again, some of them are going to be better marksmen and kill people easier. But would we see an overall reduction in this? Right? Would the rage and isolation and resentment that feeds into mass shootings, could that be mitigated by giving some people a place to belong where they have interaction with other youth and grown-ups?
I'd hope so.
What else is on the table? What other choice do we have? So, you mentioned, oddly enough, I flirted with the idea of joining the military, but I don't think I ever seriously considered it. But I do think something out of high school for a year would have been great for me. Would have really worked wonders on my ability to function. And what's funny is, me and my friends in the Bronx, like, they liked to lead recruiters on. They would go to their office on purpose just to fuck with them and get them thinking they were interested. Yeah.
Well, I can certainly see why. I mean, it is some of them were pretty jerky, but the guy I talked to was not. If you are watching somewhere out there, sir.
Do you remember the Beavis and Butthead
No.
episode where they went to the recruiter's office and they walked in and he leaned back behind his desk and he had different VHS tapes to show to the different people. And so one of them said minorities, gays, and then one of them said no future, and he pulled that one out to show them.
You know, that would not surprise me. It's you know, it reminds me of certain car dealerships. They look for a diversity, a poo-poo platter of staffers, and they deploy them based on who walks in. And you know, it is logical, right?
Sure.
That guy I talked to from Alabama, he was a black guy. So, you know, I think that was probably for a reason.
I'm sure sometimes it backfires where you mismatch somebody because you misgauge the surface features. But yes, sure.
Speaking of surface features,
Speaking of if you ain't black, or speaking of you ain't black,
Sabby, I got a secret for you.
what's that?
Joe Biden is old.
No.
He is a elderly man with a poor memory.
With dementia.
I mean, this can't possibly be a thing that anyone would have considered at any point in the last, I don't know, 15 years. This is not a concept that's real. It can't possibly, we couldn't have conceived of this idea. Did you conceive of this idea that Joe Biden is he's an elderly man with a poor memory?
I mean, I'm shocked that anybody would even broach such a thing.
In fact, if you did, it's because you were a member of the Trump administration. Hence where we're going next. There's a show that I listen to too much because I don't really, I enjoy the subject matter of the show, but I listen to the show and I hear navel gazing. And it's one of the things that keeps me coming back because these people are so insular in their little world and they can't possibly see anything outside of it. It's called The Powers That Be Daily.
Never heard of it.
It is, I used to host a show at USA Today called 5 Things back then. Now it's called The Excerpt. And it is a show that like many podcasts for major publications where a host interviews mostly journalists. They see it as a way to talk about their stories in a way that will hopefully drive traffic and engagement. This is Puck's version of that show. Puck being the subscription platform owned and operated by journalists. So I listen to this show often. I often roll my eyes when I listen to it because it's like, what the hell? And I want to share a bit of this with you because it starts with denial on Monday.
Before getting more into sports, and we love to talk about sports at Puck now, even more because we have John around on staff.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk to you about the electricity at President Biden's defiant press conference last Thursday. Tensions flaring with Fox News. Peter Doocy, who loves to get in fights with President Biden and get those sound bites for Fox. This was all over, of course, the special counsel's report clearing Biden of wrongdoing when it comes to classified documents. But this dude who, served in the Trump administration, Robert Hur, went out of his way to criticize Biden's age and his memory. It did feel like the sort of Comey report on Hillary Clinton right before the election in 2016. Yeah. Look, two things can be true at once. Biden's age, perhaps his feebleness, his inability to get through sentences, that's an issue. Americans agree with that. 32% of Americans, only 32%, according to NBC News, see Biden as competent, and compare that to 48% for Donald Trump. It's an issue. It's an issue. But the other thing that is true here is that Robert Hur clearly has an agenda and put in a bunch of extraneous stuff in this report to fuck with Biden. And that became the story. The story wasn't that Biden was cleared of wrongdoing. The story was more evidence heading into his reelection that Biden is too old to be president. And of course, Peter Doocy from Fox News gets up there on Thursday evening as Biden defiantly comes out and stands up and says, "How bad is your memory? And can you continue as president?" That's Doocy. Biden responded, quote, "My memory is so bad that I let you speak." This is not the first time tensions have flared between Doocy and Biden. Back in 2022, Doocy also asked a pretty performative question about inflation. And Biden was on a hot mic calling him a stupid son of a bitch. He later had to apologize to Doocy. They took a picture together. Look, win-win for both sides here. The Democratic White House loves to fuck with Fox. Fox loves to make Biden look like a Weekend at Bernie's character. What was your take on this whole exchange?
Okay. Look, there's no doubt that Peter Doocy and Fox News, they don't like Joe Biden. Peter Doocy in particular has made hay based on his, how shall I say it, being the Sam Donaldson of his era, essentially, where he's not afraid to yell and ask pestering, persistent questions about stuff. But what I found most interesting about this perspective, especially at this point, this juncture, at the beginning of this very week, is that after all that, he thought the most important thing that came out of that announcement from her was that Biden got off. Not the fact that the president is an elderly man with a bad memory. And the fact that was just a shock. That was just a shot. That's a low blow coming from the media, coming from her.
Someone with an agenda is how he described it.
Someone with an agenda, and it it was some sort of shocking,
insinuation to make, like it's like a stretch somehow.
It's a vast right-wing conspiracy,
to spin this and color it in a way that's such a, it's so clearly biased, is what these people are saying. Yeah.
Speaking of bias, that was Monday. I'll take you to Thursday. Same show. All right.
While you cue this up, I have a quick question.
Powers that be. I'm joined today by Dylan Byers to talk about the media, of course. There's an interesting angle to all of these swirling questions about President Biden's age, whether he's fit for a second term, all of the blowback following Robert Hur's special counsel report, suggesting that Biden has memory problems, even though, and Jon Stewart pointed this out on The Daily Show with Donald Trump and the Trump family. I feel like everyone in a deposition has memory problems conveniently.
Yeah, right.
But Dylan, you have a piece up this week that I think was an interesting angle to this. I know everyone's talking about his age and it feels like saturation homogenous commentary at this point. But you actually talked to members of the White House press corps about how they're covering Biden's age, what they've seen up close over the last 4 years. What are you picking up here? I mean, like anyone in the White House, reporters, they don't see Biden every day, but they catch glimpses of him every day, and they travel with him in the travel pool. They see him going in and out of the White House, up and down the steps, to Marine One, to Air Force One. Do they think Biden's age is having an impact on his ability to run the country?
So what I would say, Peter, is they do not necessarily feel as though his age, or they are not seeing evidence that his age has any effect on his ability to do the job. And I think, as you and John have pointed out, this is the presidency is an office, and he is surrounded by capable people and may very well be quite capable himself. However, what they are noticing, I surveyed many of them over the last 72 hours, what they are noticing, all of them to a T, is that the signs of age are notable, significant, perhaps more significant than the coverage up until now would reflect, and that it is an issue that decidedly cannot be dismissed. And I think one thing that her report, one of the reasons the Her report was significant for the White House press corps specifically, is because this is an issue, Biden's age, the shuffling, the gaffes, the memory, all of it is something that they have witnessed firsthand for a long time. It is something that they have been talking about amongst themselves for a long time. And what they told me is that in retrospect, they feel as if the coverage should have done more to reflect the private conversations that they were having, because in many cases, what they have been seeing has until now been a sort of tough and indelicate question to cover. Really interestingly, one of the journalists I spoke to in the White House press corps, likened it almost to trying to address the issue of Bill Clinton's flirtatiousness, which was something that everyone felt like they were seeing covering the president in the White House, but couldn't really talk about until the Monica Lewinsky scandal. And so now they've sort of arrived at this point where they're saying, yeah, he is growing old, and anyone who is dealing with an aging parent, an aging partner, an aging spouse, sibling, like, knows what this is and knows what this looks like, and we can't ignore it.
Wow, man. Wow.
Sounds like I wouldn't call it a conspiracy. I thought, like, you hear things about JFK and FDR in particular, JFK and his drug habits and all the women. FDR and the fact that he was paralyzed and the American public didn't know. I thought we were past that, but apparently not. The White House press corps, and tell me if you got a different impression than I just got. According to this report that Dylan Byers, who's a very, very good media reporter, dropped in Puck, that the White House press corps, many members of the White House press corps, chose to withhold this information from their coverage because it was too delicate to bring up. God. And it was like Bill Clinton in flirting with women. Only, flirting with women doesn't make you incapable of holding office.
No, and the conflation there is really underhanded. Because flirting with women is something the public doesn't see. This is something that has been evident since Biden was campaigning. And so even this admission that they thought it should have gotten more coverage, there's still a gaslighting going on, as if like, wow, well, now we think it's like this has been glaringly fucking obvious. And there's something so disturbing about the media's inability to address this head on, to just call it, to say the emperor has no fucking clothes. And I encountered this too with friends who were very much pro-Biden when he ran, and they just could not. Now, one of them has since come around. He's like, you were right. You were absolutely right. But it's like this spell Like, I want to believe something so bad. I want to have an alternative to Trump so bad. Because, I mean, you and I are not Trump apologists either.
hmm
But my God, this guy is, I mean, he should be in a nursing home or have some in home care, enjoying the twilight years of his life. It's fucking scary that as a country, this is our figurehead.
It makes you wonder who's running the country.
Oh, it sure shit does now, doesn't it?
And when, as a member of the media, you know, I always found myself smirking when people would lecture about, hey, how important our jobs are and how we are having those that choose to put us in the, we are under attack. We must protect ourselves. We are this some vaunted class. We are clergy.
Yeah, you're providing a vital public service that is on par with putting yourselves on the front lines of a war, an ongoing war against an ongoing war on behalf of truth.
Until it is inconvenient, to borrow Al Gore's term. This is where media bias and the shapes of these organizations, as we talked about extensively before, comes into play. You don't, as a reporter, you don't choose what you report on your own. There's an apparatus around you. Sometimes it's one person. Very often it's a group of people. Unless it's, breaking news, something that's inignorable, something like the shooting we discussed earlier. It's not just the press corps that made this decision. It's just about every major news organization.
Mm-hmm.
They chose to not acknowledge that Joe Biden is old and that he's got a bad memory and that he's got control of the nuclear codes.
And
We
that he's
think.
cognitively impaired. I mean, that's really, it's not just a bad memory. He's cognitively impaired.
Now, if you're okay with that, if you think that, hey, he's got a good team around him, kind of like that Hamby said prior to Byers speaking. Secondly, that it's a office, it is a team, and it's true. All that's true. But the question is, like, if someone was running your household,
Mm-hmm. Even
if
a
someone
school,
was,
even
if someone was driving,
or a grocery store, a
you
hospital.
you wouldn't. How do you give a deference to that much more, someone with that much more power in that circumstance?
By being fucking crazy or by being a propagandist for the administration. The host of that show said in the other segment, well, has clearly got an agenda. And I was going to ask you, do these people know when they have an agenda? And then I heard the second clip and I was like, he has to know. It's such a crass, like that segment is such a crass piece of deceitfulness.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. This was a week, and the reason why I presented this, not just because of the power that be, sort of hate listening to it, as I do often. It is representative. It represents the larger news industry panic right now. That these folks have a horse in this race. And they're at the point where their horse in the race and the realities that can force them to display the things that would hurt that horse are colliding.
That the horse is one step away from the glue factory.
And so I think some people have that kind of foreknowledge and forethought and think about this. I think
Mhm.
many of them are simply going through the motions. They are in an environment where 99% of them agree with them that their news judgments are roughly the same. If they're arguing over minutia. They're not arguing over the meat of the issue. They're not arguing whether it should be a different meal. They're saying,
Mhm.
okay, we agree on the meal, but it should be rare versus medium rare. Like it's not. It's actually ties into my points earlier about us avoiding dealing with the actual issue.
Mhm. Right. They're not disagreeing from different angles or different perspectives or seeing different facets of an issue. They are squarely in the same two-dimensional sheet of graph paper, pointing the same way and looking at this as a math problem. They don't have another perspective. And I think you're right in that a lot of these people don't see. I mean, I heard this with my own ears at the Super Bowl party. I heard people who do not see outside of their own bias enough to understand that the things outside of their bias are not just to be ridiculed. They're just like, oh, well, that's crazy, kind of a thing. And it's like, wow. So this fucking guy being like, oh, well, hair clearly has an agenda. It's like, holy shit. Like, you're no different than a state propagandist. And you're saying that somebody else has an agenda. I just wonder how much this person sees their own agenda.
I think this is one of those weeks where they'd see it.
They know they're bullshitting here in this case because it's so obvious. And it has been for 4 years.
Longer,
Actually longer than that. Yeah, because whenever the campaign started.
even longer than that. I think he always had gaffes. But late in the Obama years,
Mm,
there was a conversation that became public. Well, honestly, late in the first term, it was clear that Obama did not want Biden to run for a second, that it was
mm.
Hillary's turn. And if you saw him then, you really saw the down slope already began.
I didn't know that.
So you had that 60 minutes sit down where it was right after the election, after Mitt Romney is defeated. You
Mhm.
see Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama on 60 Minutes. You never see that kind of thing where you see a sitting president and a cabinet secretary
Right.
being
Instead of the vice
interviewed.
yeah.
Because, I mean, essentially, they had made a decision then that it was not going to be Joe. It can't be Joe. Now, some of the other factors we talked about earlier, you know, stacking. You know, maybe it was part of the deal that when Hillary and Barack reached a détente in '08, maybe it was. But I think honestly, age was a question.
Wow, that was fucking 16 years ago. Damn. Wow, man. It's like so scary that this is considered acceptable discourse. It's like how do people get hypnotized by this? Both the audience and within you have a lot to say about how people get hypnotized within organizations. I don't think that's as mysterious. But my God, man. Like
I think
this is as profound. You know those social psychology experiments where they get three people in a room, or you have to pick which line is the shortest, and you get four people, and everybody is in on the experiment except for one person, but that person doesn't know, and they go last, and everybody says the longest line is the shortest, right? They point to the one that's clearly not the shortest, and then the last person feels pressure to pick that one too. It's sort of like that, except it's working internally. People have convinced themselves somehow when this
I
is
think
screaming at us right in our face.
I think that culturally, getting back to the cultural divide that we're in, I think we have pushed the rhetoric to extremes for so long that it's hard to come back from that. The rhetoric, the tone of our culture has been in such disarray.
Mm.
And
Dysregulated, even, I think, is a good
yeah,
term for it.
we reached, you know, I don't know how many times I've mentioned Adam Curtis in public, but if you're not familiar with him, he is a filmmaker who works mostly with the BBC, and he makes conceptual films, and kind of like let's say Michael Moore-ish, only he's not really going for comedy.
Mm.
And the one that I point to most to describe this sort of time and how people are reacting and how people are interacting is hypernormalization,
Mm.
which is a term I believe from a Russian scholar, but at least this is what Curtis claims. I've been looking for it. That everybody knew that the government was lying. Everybody knew that everything was wrong or off, but it was so much bigger than them that they didn't know what to do.
You're talking about in the USSR or where?
In the USSR.
Yeah.
So in the 70s and 80s, that we could tell that things weren't working, that things were falling apart, that there was a lot, that we were constantly being lied to. And it was so much bigger than them and they felt so small that they didn't feel like they could do anything. So you end up in this sort of lifelong limbo where you just sort of march through life and you go through your things. You take your daughter to school. I go to work. I clean out my car. I go about, chasing some of my dreams. But in order to keep doing that, you have to accept this sort of abnormal reality. You can't think deeply about what's going on. You got to think. It's in that circumstance, and Curtis didn't say this is my analysis. And when you're living in that circumstance, and that circumstance just sticks,
Mm-hmm.
it's real easy to just pick a color and go.
Right. It takes a lot of energy to stay in a constant state of vigilance against it.
You're fighting a tide,
Mm-hmm.
and you get exhausted. And I look around, especially people I'm 39. I look at people around my age that I know, and I when I sit down with them, boy, everybody looks freaking exhausted. The economy, COVID, and just this sort of extreme polarization everywhere. It's wearing down on everybody. The cartilage is sort of getting down to bone,
Mm. Right, because you can't really go anywhere without feeling it. Any social interaction you have, you're bound to brush up against it in some form.
which brings us
The-
back to the Super Bowl party, right?
Yep.
You know, I hope I'm wrong, and this is just like something that we will snap out of. That among the people, I point to is that Neil Howell has described. Maybe this is just transitional period, and we have this grand crescendo, and we snap back, and we're in a different era as has happened You know?
Every time, according to him, right?
Yeah, about every 80 years. But I worry that, this maybe Curtis Yarvin's right.
Mm.
And we are just going to see, an empire degrading slowly over time.
Could they both be true?
Could be. Could be. We could be headed in a good part of a downslope.
Right, right. Or a contraction that might end up being better, although painful, but we might end up better than.
But if you put those two ideas together, the best is gone.
I mean, it's certainly there is certainly a sort of poetic kind of eeriness to everything we're seeing. It's like, I don't know, when you get to a point where a society can't be coherent with itself. That I don't know enough of the curve of history, but that just feels like a really bad, ominous sign. However, the only thing that I would say on the other side of it is, and I do think this is significant. I do think the shift to more local focus will have some bad outcomes too, but I also think there's something emerging from that is, I feel like it's an engine that's picking up and going in some positive directions.
Agreed. And I think that that's why I think ideas like national divorce have picked up, where it's whether it actually happens, the idea that, hey, I need to put a stake in the ground and kind of be like more people like me is a thing that is a decision that Americans are making and have been making in droves. That's why we're reshuffling ourselves. If you look around, we've seen COVID sped this up, but this has been happening for the last 25 years, easy, where we're seeing red states get redder, blue states get bluer, blue enclaves get bluer. And a few spots we're seeing purple, or like Texas is more purple than it used to be. But for the most part, things are getting ideologically purer, which is scary.
It is scary. I do think there's going to be something of a limit on that, because I think once the federal government, if it were to ever recede, where people are feeling more of their political consequences coming from the state level, then they would be upset with the state. They would see that the state is indeed
Sure.
the state.
Sure.
It's not really inherently different than the federal. There's nothing mechanically distinct other than that it's smaller. I also think as things get more local and as circumstances force us to interdepend, I think that could lead to, because a lot of this is sort of a luxury. We have this luxury that we can pretend that we're totally separated, because we've had a lifestyle, this country, for like 70 fucking years now, more than that. You can afford to do that. I think that's changing. I don't think that's going to be possible for much longer. You're going to have to.
Well, I think what will happen at some point, and I don't know when, but it happens to every society, is that you hit a brick wall. And you usually don't know when the brick wall is coming. That's the interesting thing about now, because so many people are looking around that I encounter, because of this eerie feeling that what we've been describing here. They feel like the brick wall is right there.
We're in free fall, right? It's like that part in jumping out of a plane, skydiving, where they look like they're floating, but the ground is there.
Yeah, maybe that's where we're at. But you're like you said, eventually you hit the ground. Every society does it. Now it's how you survive that.
Mm-hmm.
We did it once. Like we fractured, and then we fought a really bloody war to come back together, and then we subjugated the South and brought them on board. Didn't fix everything, but it did sort of, it extended the timeline for another couple of centuries.
And here's the thing: it's really easy to be cynical and say, "Oh, everything's going to shit." I do have to think that there are inherent qualities, distinctly American qualities, that may come into play in our favor. That there is a certain spirit that has not been completely eroded that may reawaken in the face of hardship. Now, I'm not entirely idealistic about it, but I think I cannot just accept that everything that made this country great, for lack of a better phrase, has disappeared. It's still there somewhere, just dormant.
I certainly hope you're right.
Let's hope so, or right enough that we're at least in the messy middle instead of just an abject, horrific collapse.
On that note, what are you reading, watching, or listening to?
So I am listening to the Witch Trials of J.K. Rowling and enjoying that very much. And I've also just recently been turned on to this Rumble channel. He's on YouTube as well, called Cancel This Conspiracy. His name is Ian Carroll. He's on Twitter. Really, really funny, witty, almost satirical breakdown of a lot of the issues you and I talk about, but addresses conspiracies head on and the way they're talked about and manipulated, but with tons of humor.
Well, Ian Carroll.
Yes.
Okay, I have to check out some Ian Carroll.
Yeah, he is on Twitter. This is kind of a difficult Twitter handle. It's if you go on Rumble, it's Cancel This Conspiracy. On Twitter, his handle is Cancel CL or Cancel C Local. Cancel C LOCO. And I'm due to start another book at some point. I'm not sure what I'm going to start yet.
Aside from the powers that be, I've been listening to Jim Brewer's Brewerverse podcast.
Great. Oh, I haven't heard his podcast, but he is so funny and so cool.
He's funny, and he's gotten more, not so much political,
topical,
but he's topical. And he is talking a lot about some of these things that we've been talking about for the last 2.5 hours, where he found himself in a similar thing because he didn't want to take the COVID jab, and he found himself sort of isolated. And then he decided that, hey, I'm gonna talk to the people who want to talk to me, and he's gotten more spiritual. He's gotten more sort of just open-minded to different concepts and ideas. And he has this thing where, because it comes to mind because you mentioned the conspiracy, his conspiracy show is The Bunker, where he puts on sunglasses and he goes deep into sort of like whatever weird thing that's on his mind that has come up with a friend of his called Jimmy Shaka. Shout out to Jimmy Shaka and Jim Brewer.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, you should. I think you'll enjoy it. He's very funny. I'm hoping I need to. He's coming to Rochester next month, so I'm thinking about buying tickets.
Definitely, I got to check him out. I have to check him out. Yes, both the podcast and in person. I'm glad you told me about that. He's got a real great way of cutting through the insanity.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Everything we're talking about, where you're like, "What the fuck? How are people not?" He's like a ray of light through that, like cutting through the fog. I'll leave you with this. There's a hilarious stand-up bit he did where he tells a story when he was working at, I forgot which store it was, maybe Pier 1 Imports or something. I can't remember what store it was, in a mall on Long Island as a teenager. And he called in. He pretended he was Gaddafi calling in a missile strike threat.
on the department store?
Yes. Dude, it's fucking hilarious.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's
love it.
so funny, especially since you're a fan of his podcast.
Yeah.
Check it out. Like, do yourself a favor as soon as we sign off. Check that out. It's hysterical.
Well, on that note, check me out at James Brown TV everywhere. You can also see me at jamesbrowntv.substack.com and theweekendmedia.substack.com. Sabby?
Yes, feedbackdef.substack.com and feedbackdef on YouTube. I love anybody who pays attention to what I'm doing, whether they're telling me to go fuck myself or not.
Well, Sabby, 2.5 hours blew by.
Yeah, that's short for us, but yeah, that was like nice and clipped, nice economical pace there. Thank you again for having me.
Yeah, no problem. We'll do it again.
Yes, for sure. Take care.
All right. Peace.
Peace.